until the actual price is driven by the actual physical metal that exists in the vault, and there's not 100 to 200 people that are signing up and thinking that they're getting that physical ounce. Until you see that, I don't think there's a paper price that's ever connected to the physical actual metal.
Please join us for our next live stream Sunday, December 4th at 9 p.m. Eastern. We'll go over current events, past guests, and of course, gold and silver news. Once again, our next live stream will be Sunday, December 4th, 9 p.m. Eastern. See you then. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira. Dr. Tyler Wall, co-founder and CEO of SD Bullion Incorporated, joins us today. Starting back in 2012, there were very little options for retail investors that were interested in buying gold, silver, and platinum bullion. For this reason, two doctors who met in medical school and who were avid bullion investors themselves decided to launch SD Bullion as the lowest price player in the online retail space. And today, SD Bullion is a $1 billion online precious metals company. And we're delighted to have Tyler Wall join us here today. It's time to saddle up and silver up for Dr. Tyler Wall. Tyler, welcome to SBTV. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you. Dr. Wall, can you tell us a little about your background and how you started SD Bullion?
Oh, yeah, it actually goes back quite some time, but I actually didn't know anything about gold and silver in the early 2000s, and I was in the computer lab one day. I was going to school to be a pharmacist, and another one of my friends was in there. He was going to be at school to be a pharmacist. In the computer lab, I kind of leaned over and looked at his computer screen, and he was looking at gold, silver, platinum prices. And I said, "Well, what are you looking at that for?" And he leaned over and looked at my screen, and I was looking at stocks. And he's like, "Well, what are you looking at that? What are you looking at that for?" So probably for the next 5 years, we went back and forth talking about each other's views on the economy and getting arguments about who's right, who's wrong. And then the 2008 financial collapse happened, and I saw, gold, silver sell off. I hadn't bought any yet, and I saw Warren Buffett getting special deals on stocks where, if he agreed to put in a certain amount of money into a stock, he got an extra stock option to buy it at the same price he's bought it at that 2008 level. And I said, well, this is not right. This is not what we've been taught in school. This is not predicting out 6 to 8 months worth of price predictions of what something's going to be trading at or the demand for it. And silver was, I think, when I first got in, it was around $8 an ounce in 2008. It sold off from 20 to $8, and I said, well, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, we have record demand for physical metal. The price is just crashing, and so I became a believer in the value of gold and silver in anybody's portfolio. And then a few years later, I always wanted to own my own business. So graduated with a doctorate degree in pharmacy. My friend graduated as well. And I finally talked him into starting a business with me. I viewed pharmacy school as a way to provide a steady income stream for me to start a business one day. He thought I was crazy back in pharmacy school. I said, this is kind of how I've got it planned. And I started a website called freepharmacist.com. And he started a website called silverdoctors.com. And our deal was whichever one took off first, we'd join forces and be 50-50 owners. His idea was just a blog talking about gold and silver news and didn't require any startup capital at all, whereas mine required startup capital with some ideas I saw in the pharmacy that were wrong. After 7 or 8 months on the news website, he had over 1 million page views a month. And I said, okay, well, you got the traffic. We need to start monetizing this because eventually our wives are going to tell us to knock it off at night. Just go to the pharmacy and come home and spend some time with me. So I started researching how to buy, sell gold and silver to just anybody. And it took me about 2 months to research, and then at the second, right before, where it's like, well, we need to figure out who's going to launch this. We're both pharmacists. I was a pharmacy manager. There's nobody that can, to do this. I tore my Achilles tendon playing basketball and got 12 weeks out of the pharmacy where I could train our first employee to handle all orders, ship all orders. And there's actually a lot of crossover if you think about the systems as it relates to narcotic control and gold and silver inventory control. So we used what we knew of how we regulated our narcotics in the pharmacy and put those processes to work. And we started selling gold and silver in 2012. Initially, we didn't even have a website. We just had a phone number on our blog where you just call in, and it said nothing fancy, just a telephone and low prices. And started off, slow, just had a couple products available at good prices, and now we've grown to the third largest precious metal retailer in the United States.
Yeah, your company has definitely grown. Uh, I'd like to ask you about silver supply. We are
Yeah.
seeing more and more tweets and posts that there is today, or at least coming down the road, a silver shortage. Can you give us some insight on this?
Well, yeah, look, like the last 2 years, we've seen incredible demand for gold and silver, especially silver. I mean, if you look at the major exchange trade or the major warehouses, the CME and in London, those warehouses are down 25% over the last 2 years. And I mean, we're not talking about just eligible registered silver. I mean, registered silver being what's available for anybody to purchase is down, in CME down 70 over 75% as it relates to silver. So we're seeing record demand for the metal. What I thought was interesting on the report, because this comes out a couple times a year where there's what they say is a more actual demand, and there's an estimate that comes out in February. Was this report that everybody's been talking about recently, came out last week or two, was that silver reached record surge of demand, and we're close to a 200 million ounce deficit for 2022. And I remember looking at the report in early 2022, and I remember them predicting just a modest shortage. So I went back and I took a look, and in February of this year, they were predicting a modest 20 million ounce shortage in February for 2022, and they stated, and I quote, the projected deficit is relatively modest in absolute terms. So February 2022, 20 million ounce prediction of a deficit this year, which is, I agree. Maybe that would be a modest shortage. But now in November, just 9 months later, we're at a 200 million ounce predicted shortage for this year. And I went back even to 2021 because I don't think some people, they don't follow as closely maybe as I do on a daily basis. And in 2021, it was the same thing. The In February 2021, they predicted a small physical silver surplus for the year, but in November of that year, it turned out to be a 48 million ounce shortage. And then you look at this current report, like I said, last week, where they're talking about 2023, and they're saying that they're expecting the demand to subside in 2023 for silver, and they reference the expected strong demand will subside in industries such as solar panel and automakers, and I thought that was really interesting. Uh, they expect the deficits to continue, but not as large as 2022. And just referencing those two industries, I got to thinking, like, okay, so they're expecting energy costs to be less in 2023 because that's I would think one of the biggest drivers of solar panels being installed, besides subsidies from the government, would be energy costs. And if energy costs go up, then there probably will be stronger demand for solar panels. And then when they talked about industry and automakers, I'm like, well, automakers. I just read an article last week on CNBC that talked about GM predicting that their profits from their EV vehicles will be similar to gas vehicles in 2025. And I've been reading where all these investments are happening in the EV space. and in the green energy space. And I'm scratching my head thinking like, well, how is silver demand going to subside in 2023? It seems like every article that I read would cause an increase in demand. And I think one of the things that they could reference, well, physical silver demand, the things that we sell as a company, maybe that subsides. And that may be true, right? There's roughly 30% in retail physical demand, roughly 300 million ounces a year. Could that go down maybe a third? I mean, I don't think it will, but I mean, could it? Yeah. Okay. Yes, that would take out 100 million of ounces compared to this year. But if we're at a 200 million record deficit this year, then why would it be? Why would it be? Still be a 100 million deficit shortage if that happened? And I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, why would physical silver demand drop off a cliff suddenly? I mean, especially with what we're seeing in the crypto space. I mean, I would think that everybody at this stage would acknowledge that probably crypto did take some money out of the gold and silver space for a time, and I don't see that going forward, especially over the next few years. I mean, I think as humans, sometimes we'll forget about things, but I don't think the people that lost money this year in the crypto space in 2023 are suddenly don't think it's a good idea again to invest more money in the crypto space. And so I'm trying to scratch my head trying to understand why in 2023 is there going to be that big of a drop off, and why is there a continued prediction that's going to be underestimating the market? I mean, this year the February to November prediction on the shortage was a factor of 10 times wrong. It was predicted to be 20 million ounces, and it turned out that they're predicting closer to 200 million ounces. And so, you know, I think it's great that we're seeing all this silver demand. I personally think that we'll see that continue. I mean, I see where this green energy push is going. ESG is pushing this, and to me, every article I'm reading is screaming silver demand is going to increase over the next 3 to 5 years.
If you're enjoying this interview with Dr. Tyler Wall, CEO of SD Bullion, and I, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel and letting the algos know you'd like to see more content like this. And if you'd like to learn more about systemic wealth protection, please do visit us at www.silverbullion.com.sg. Yeah, I completely agree with that, because I also do see things where it looks like the demand for silver, it's not going to drop off. Uh, but the thing that has dropped off, I mean, it rises and drops off, is prices. Why do you think we aren't really seeing that much in the way of higher spot prices? Or maybe are we expecting too much too quick, considering metals are a long game?
Yeah. Well, I think the paper spot price is something that's been discussed in depth in ways that are probably a little bit too advanced for our discussion, outside of the fact that, look, like whenever you have 100 200 paper claims to one physical ounce of metal, the argument is, well, that creates liquidity. I totally disagree that creates liquidity. I think that creates periods of time where it creates tremendous spikes in the price of a commodity when you have 200 people scrambling to find that one physical ounce of that commodity. It goes outside the gold and silver space, whether that be lithium, copper, you name the commodity. That this concept of creating liquidity in those markets by creating fake contracts that aren't backed by the actual metal creates spikes. And so I think when you look at the paper market, specifically in gold and silver, I think there definitely is a lagging indicator of you're seeing these warehouses continuously decreasing over the last 2 years of the amount of inventory you have. It's kind of like a spring where at some point that price just catapults higher. And we've seen this time and time again. And in the small time that the last 15 years that I've been following the market. So I would say that I want to put a lot of emphasis on that. I think that it'll solve over time. Obviously, there's been some well publicized court cases out there on what's been going on. And at the end of the day, if this demand continues and there continues to be 100, 200 million ounce shortages, every year in the silver market, that's going to eventually reflect in price. So as it relates to retail prices, I think we've seen some of the highest premiums over spot ever in the physical market. And when you see 90% silver trading at over $10 over spot, there's something going on. I mean, 90% silver being the old U.S. coinage, that's usually a leading indicator of what's going on in the physical market space. It's the first one to show you that there's less demand. It can sometimes be traded under spot, and then in times of peak demand, it can go. What we're seeing today. I mean, record prices, and when it comes to the other sovereign mints, there's other things at play. 90% is no longer made. When you're seeing other products such as the U.S. Mint Silver Eagle, I mean that can sometimes be partly related to the actual mint itself and causing price spikes. We're seeing obviously record demand and Silver Eagles, geez, I mean 14, 15, $18 over a spot. I mean, I think it's just absurd. But at the same time, it's like we're offering people here a couple weeks ago over $10 over a spot to sell their Silver Eagles, and we were getting nobody signing up to sell us their Silver Eagles back to us at over $10 over a spot. So uh, I think it's a two separate markets. You got the paper spot price, which hopefully I've answered your question there, and then the physical market. That's a little different animal.
Right. Completely agree again with that. Silver premiums are they? Would you say the premiums are too high, or would you say maybe that paper spot price is too low?
Yeah, I mean the paper spot price in my mind is too low. I mean, whenever you're seeing these premiums over spot, for retail products, it's screaming that the paper price. Just but keep in mind, we go back and we look, silver retail demand is 30% of the demand. It comes from physical investment for consumptions of bars, coins, etc. For a time in 2020 when that first, I think they call it silver squeeze happened, there's a couple issues there. I mean, one was there's people that had metals overseas that couldn't bring it back, especially in the States where we had a lot of retail demand. And then the other thing would be the capacity constraints of the machinery it takes to produce the retail friendly products. 1,000 ounce bars did have gone up in price, and we've seen that. But at the end of the day, we've added a ton of capacity throughout the markets on the retail 1 ounce round 1 ounce bars. I mean, I just came back from a conference a couple weeks ago, and everybody's talking about how much they've added capacity, and then everybody's pretty much doubling or tripling capacity for next year. That kind of helps gets those prices down to a more attractive level, I think. But at the same time, I mean, you're looking at the exchanges. We could talk about retail product and retail premiums, but the exchanges show that CME registered silver is down 75%, over 75%. And, it's just way too much demand for silver right now. And at the end of the day, that's going to be reflected in the prices to the end consumer trying to buy the actual metal. If they're trying to buy the metal, it's a different price than if you just want to, trade the paper.
Right. That silver squeeze brought a lot of attention to silver, and we did see
Yeah.
silver prices get a good bump, but it
Yeah.
it didn't last. Why couldn't silver hold that upward momentum during that time?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. I analyze this market, and the interesting thing about it is how much everybody shorts the paper contracts, right? So you see a surge, you see an absolute surge in demand, and you have we handle things a little bit differently than what most people do in our business because we actually believe in the metal. So we have a targeted position that we do not short, like our core inventory position. We set at a level that we can afford because that's our asset. That's it's 80% or whatever our asset value is, and so we maintain that position. We do not short it. But the majority of people in this market just short their inventories and they short purchases, and so pretty much everybody shorts it down to the mine, and then they short it. Uh, yeah, everybody's short the paper contracts, and so we did see a divergence in that. A couple months after that, you saw a divergence in the over counter price compared to the future price, and I think gold, it was like got up to spiked up to like $75 difference between the delivery price and the bank counter price. And one of the things I've been noticing in this market is that the more the demand happens for physical metal, and the more that gets out, in future months. And so if you're buying silver right now, for example, we're often signing up for 8 to 12 week delays. Well, that creates a even more future short positions in the market through wholesalers and mints. And so I think that might have something to do with it. But at the end of the day, that's just one opinion, is that, until the actual price is driven by the actual physical metal that exists in the vault, and there's not 100 to 200 people that are signing up and thinking that they're getting that physical ounce, until you see that, I don't think there's a paper price that's ever connected to the physical actual metal, the actual amount that's actually in the vault, and the price that it takes to take one physical ounce truly off that exchange.
With the de-dollarization going on all over the world, and it seems like we're headed toward a new monetary system. Do you see silver returning to the monetary system in the future?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think it's going to go back in the formal traditional, monetary sense. I think the silver market's just too tight of a market. I mean, there's just too much demand for, advanced technology. We talked about the EV vehicles, like all this stuff's going on. I just don't see it getting back to the traditional way where it's in coinage. But I mean, I could see a case for it, and sometimes where for like private transactions, like for a legal binding contract, sale, payment. Another currency crisis happens, and somebody wants to buy some land of some sort, just private, individual, deals. I could see it happening there. I don't think it's going to actually get back into the coins that you take to the supermarket, but I don't think we're going back there anyway with what we've been seeing in the digital world of the central bank digital currencies, the CBDCs. And so I don't see it getting there, but I obviously would welcome any sort of way that we could get there, because I mean I'm obviously a big believer in silver and the store of value that it has.
Right. So let's say you had a choice, you had a pick for the upcoming monetary system that comes around after the
Mhm.
fiat dollar system kind of blows away. Would you be looking at maybe a gold standard, a gold exchange standard, or would you be looking at something else?
Yeah, that's another good question. I mean, I guess it's very interesting because I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking that I have the power to change the monetary system. I've learned that that's just not happening. The central planners, I'm not one of them. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this question, because what I do see in the world is this push for the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies that over 100 some countries are now promoting. And it feels like, this has been talked about for several years, that this is kind of the direction that we're going. And it was kind of hypothesized even how we're going to get there. And it feels exactly like the strategy from 5 years ago on how we're going to get there, right? Like 5 years ago, I feel like I remember everybody talking about, like, well, okay, the cryptocurrency space is a way to soften and educate and get everybody comfortable with trading basically nothing, right? I mean, it's now known that you're buying something, but then if you take it for collateral, you're collateralizing something that doesn't actually physically exist. And then if somebody says it's not worth it, then then it's that collateral goes away and it can vanish to zero right now. And it's getting people warmed up, though, with the ability of thinking that that's a way that works. And for me, I've never been in that market, and I know some people trade, a little bit in that market, and I have no problem with that if they understand what they're doing. It's fine if they want to diversify, but for me, it's always been like that, and I think that the pathway of 5 years ago to finding was just getting everybody comfortable with it, to open it up for nations to launch a digital currency, which may or may not be backed by anything, right? and everybody is okay with it. And I think that's very scary because you look at what's happened in the web space, right? Where you have people that are controlling, search engines, and people that are controlling all algorithms, and people are controlling, what freedom of speech is. And then you put that power in the same hands of the people that are making those decisions. And it's one thing to not have a voice on the internet, which I feel like there's a lot of people in this space, including myself, that felt like we couldn't say exactly what we want to say, and I still can't say everything I want to say, even on this interview. And you give that power to these people that could potentially control what you buy and you sell. And for me, that's extremely scary. And for me, it's even more reason why I feel comfortable owning physical metal, because at the end of the day, I think that system ends up just like what we've seen happen recently in other digital spaces, and there's no replacing something that actually physically exists that's it's going to hold value, and that's, to me, precious metals. That's what they've been doing for thousands of years. People can try to create a new way. People have done that for, I'm sure, thousands of years as well, creating a new way to store value. But for me, that's why I've been a big believer. That's why I'm in this industry, and that's why I think that's continue to excel. And in a digital currency world, if I had to pick the best one, of course, I'm going to back the digital by gold. Am I going to believe that person that has gold? I mean, a country. I mean, I don't know. It depends on the situation. I doubt it, but I'm just thankful I have my own vault, so I know that it's there.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously there were things that happened that have awakened you. There are things that have awakened me, a lot of the viewers out there as
Right.
well. But we are seeing more and more a distrust, a dislike in the US dollar or any fiat currency, distrust in governments, distrust in global organizations. With this growing discord, disconnect, will it I mean, what will it take for more people to awaken to these things and actually move into precious metals and pull their trigger and buy their first ounce of silver?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, earlier in the Silver Institute thing, I said, well, technically you could have technically that could be possible if you have a retail physical market that drops investment demand by a third, but I don't believe it. I think it's going to go the opposite direction, right? Like, I feel like people are starting to get acclimated to it, and I think what we've seen this last year in 2022. I mean, we're seeing people come to the space. I mean, my personal family members are in this space that thought I was crazy when we started this business, and now think, and now the majority of them are now customers, right? I mean, I think everybody is sort of awakening to this, and I think that the fact that we had this massive collapse lately in the crypto space starts getting people back connected to reality. And the other big development that was in 2022 that I thought was very interesting, and you mentioned about the U.S. dollar, was when Russia demanded everybody pay for their energy in rubles, and I've been telling friends and family I thought that was the most uh, one of the biggest things that's happened in our lives is when is a country that's able and has done it, trading energy in a non-US dollar denominated form. And you're starting to see China now accumulate gold, and, rumored to accumulate gold. You don't know that for sure, but I mean, there's many people saying like, well, why is all this, where's all this warehouse gold going? Where's, you look at the gold, and we've been talking a lot about silver, but you look at the exchanges on gold. I mean, it's down. It's down. It is down a lot, like pushing like 30 or 40%, I believe, last time I looked at it. And where's that gold going? Well, there's been a lot of people talking about China, because what we talk about retail demand, but like central bank demand and country demand, that understand that if we're going to actually say our currency is worth something, gold backed, saying we have gold in a vault does mean something. And you saw that in Russia. You saw that after they made those demands to pay in rubles, they also said, oh, they also temporarily put their redeemable into gold, and their currencies strengthened. against the dollar. I mean, I looked at that chart last week and I saw, you look at the ruble versus the dollar and you go back 5 years and it's stronger now than I think it was in like 2018, 2019 before everything happened. So I think that you're going to continue to see that movement. I think that if I was running the reports, I would be predicting that physical demand would increase. I mean, I don't understand why you would. You can say it's a record demands, but how many times can you be wrong before we predict that in 2023 the demand's going to increase and the deficit is going to be more than what it's like this year? Why do you think how many years are going to go by before you change your mindset and say, well, no, that demand's not going to decrease next year like we predicted wrong for the last 2 years. That demand's actually going to increase next year. So that's personally where I'm at.
I want to go back to those CBDCs. It's been announced. It's been announced that digital dollar testing is happening, and I've heard people say this is great for business in that transfers may be easier. Cutting out banks in between may make it cheaper for businesses and maybe cheaper for consumers. Tyler, are digital dollars, are central bank digital currencies the solution to what is increasingly becoming a broken monetary system?
No, I don't think so because, like I said, not only is it bad for individuals and their freedom to do what they want with their money, but I think overall the system fails because we've seen what the government tends to do as it relates to monetary policy. Like if you go back to early 2000s, nobody could envision the United States of America going into quantitative easing. Nobody could envision a country that supposedly the most dominant country ever known to the world, right? Deciding that we're going to print money to, to pay off our debts. Like nobody thought that was actually going to happen. And now it's just generally accepted that QE1, QE2, QE3, QE to infinity is going to happen. So we take that system and we replace it with a digital system that makes it even easier for the people to the monetary authorities to do more of the same, but more even more of that. Like it doesn't make any sense. And when you see the sentiment of the people who are you know equality and screaming these different things of all the things that they need to live, you realize that this is just it's a constant more and more and more until the system just absolutely explodes. So when you don't have a strong rule, a strong standard, a strong monetary backbone to say, we can't spend more money. We have to cut spending. We have to increase saving. We have to encourage saving. And then you give them an easier solution to control money. That's a recipe for a disaster. That will not work. And, it may be one of those things where it works for the first 5, 10 years, but then it doesn't work. You know, so no, it would be a terrible thing. And they're obviously they can scream about the benefits, and some of those benefits happen, but the problem is you don't have a backbone to control the people that are running it.
Tyler, with all that's happening right now, how important is it for all of us to understand what it means to have some silver, have some gold, and to be your own bank?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I always recommend is I've never been big on debt. As a company, we've never had debt. So I really that's the first thing I always tell people before we even start talking about gold and silver is like watch your debt, because everybody's saying inflation, 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 and everybody has their mind, oh, this is just an amount of debt I can afford until something happens and you have zero income coming in and you get wiped out even if your payment was only at 2 or 3% interest, you still can't afford it. So I always recommend paying down debt, first. And then of course having some uh having some in gold and silver is why we're here, why you are here, why you're there, and we're talking about this because for me, that's been a store of value for thousands of years, and I think the time to hold gold and silver is never the case for it. It's never been stronger. I mean, we talk about all these things that's going on with, CBDs, the central bank digital currencies. We talk about quantitative easing. We talk about inflation, hyperinflation, all these things. I mean, I would not get discouraged about the paper price. I think that will resolve over time. I think that, when we start seeing spikes, look at our, if you look at our, demand, our demand actually is the least amount when the market price is static. So if we're trading sideways, there's people that think, oh, I'm going to buy gold and silver tomorrow. No need to rush in to buy it today. We'll see spikes in demand when it crashes. But, if we start going the other opposite direction, like we see when silver was running to 50, we start seeing huge demand. And, I think there's a lot of people that enter that market that haven't entered the market. And at that price, at that point, they're paying way more over spot for gold and silver. And it's almost getting too late to get in the market. So, I'm not sure if that, kind of answers your question, but that's where I see where we're going.
All right. So you mentioned even your family are customers now, so even they are paying the premium. So I'm never complaining about premiums again. Tyler Wall, before we wrap up, can you tell us about SD Bullion and how people can follow you on social media?
All right. Well, yeah. So we talked about SD Bullion. SDBullion.com is where our website is to purchase, buy gold and silver. On social media, the normal hashtags, which is twitter.com, hashtag SD Bullion. So we're on Twitter. That's where I would say follow us there. You can sign up to our email list for discounts on our website as well, special discounts, coupons. So but no, I appreciate you having me on. It's great to talk about gold and silver. It's always something that I like to do because I'm a big believer in that. And anything we can do to help others people understand the value of gold and silver is obviously something that we're in that arena. So
Okay, great. Yeah, we appreciate it as well. We're happy to have you here. Dr. Tyler Wall, CEO of SD Bullion. I hope we can do this again soon and let's see how things unfold.
sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
That was Dr. Tyler Wall, CEO of SD Bullion, sharing his views on the economy and precious metals. Please be sure to visit his website, sdbullion.com, for precious metals. If you like this interview, please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and share. Let the algos know you'd like to see more content like this. Audio-only versions of this interview can be found on iTunes and Spotify.